Amanda, please!
Yo, 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 it's Amanda's Jacuzzi!
Bring in the dancing lobsters!
Totally Kyle.
I forgot about Totally Kyle.
I know, it just came to me while we were doing that. Welcome back, Corkies, to episode 51 of Crips and Corks. I'm your host, DJ, here with my co-host,
Paul, as usual.
I totally just, caught myself in the viewfinder and just, stared into my own eyes and zoned out while you introduced yourself.
That's that's only 2 seconds, first of all, and I feel like not good,
It felt a lot longer.
It sounds like you just had, a spiritual experience. You saw into your
I left
own
my
soul.
husk. I offered myself up to the sky, and it took me. I ascended to another astral plane.
God. I wish I could get taken. Oh my god.
I just, stared into I was gone here for 2 seconds. In my soul, I was gone for 3 years.
Oh, Jesus.
Not really. It just felt, really long. But, Paul, how are you? What's going on?
Last night's poor decisions are coming back to haunt me, I'm feeling a little hungover, girl. And we're getting older. We can't drink like we used to. And that is a lesson I am very much learning the hard way, everybody.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where, getting older, when you're young, you can drink whiskey, tequila, rum, vodka. It don't matter. You're fine the next day. And then one day you wake up, and if you so much as sniff tequila while you're drinking vodka, you're sick the next day. I'm now at the point where all I had was vodka last night, and I woke up with a headache.
Right. All I had was vodka and White Claws and a headache.
Well, you were mixing. That is a mixing. White Claws are not vodka. They're a seltzer.
It's basically vodka, okay? White Claw is basically vodka. But honestly, the worst thing about a hangover is the headache, alright? And it gets enough to ruin your whole next day. And I'm not cut out for this. I used to be, but I'm just not cut out for this anymore, girl. I can't be doing all this. I'm not one of those kids. We go to the gay bars and we see those young kids. Oh my god, I can't be doing this anymore.
See, what was making me really upset was there was that new twink. Mm-hmm. And everyone was gooped and gagged and talking about this new twink.
Are we talking about the one that our group of friends was talking to? Les?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just standing there and I was like, I don't see the attraction.
No, I mean, he was cute in the face, but he was definitely too young.
Yes.
He literally probably just got his university card, last week. He probably just moved to the university last week. Way too young, kids. Way too young.
And you know what? Gay men out there who are our age, you don't need a little boy.
Exactly.
You need a man of experience.
Yes. And you know what? DJ has had more experience, has been so used and worn down that he is perfect. If you're looking for an old beat up truck, right here, he's gotcha. Speaking of which, how was your week?
Well, I would kill for a cheeseburger right now.
Honestly, I love a good fucking cheeseburger.
So I had to go to the liquor store before this.
Yeah.
And we're doing this early because we have a lot to do today.
Yeah.
And so there's this coffee shop that just opened across the street from the liquor store I always go to, and I was like, okay, I'll go there rather than going to a Dunkin' or Starbucks because the line's not going to be as long and we're trying to save time. And it's good. Support small businesses. And
Exactly.
I mean that. Support small businesses.
Period.
So I go in there. First of all, so it's a gluten-free vegan bakery.
Oh, Jesus.
So I already know I'm not getting any food.
Right. That sounds awful.
And so I look at the coffee menu. And their coffee menu is drip coffee, iced coffee, hot tea, iced tea.
They're basic.
And I'm like, okay, I really wanted a latte. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just get a nice coffee. And she goes, do you want cream in that? And I go, yes. And she goes, okay, do you want oat milk, almond milk, soy milk?
Oh,
and I'm like,
all the nut milks. Except
do
for
you just have like 2%?
They had all the nut milks.
And I'm like, none of that's going to take away the coffee taste that I don't want.
I don't know. Almond milk definitely has a taste to it.
Yeah, but when you pour it in coffee, it doesn't do nothing.
I don't know. I think if you poured enough in, you'd taste the almonds.
So then I was like, okay, I'm just going to dump this, and I'm going to stop at Dunkin' because I pass a Dunkin'.
Mm-hmm.
Line out the parking lot. Mm-hmm. There's a McDonald's 2 minutes up the road. I'll stop at McDonald's, and I will get food with it.
Right.
The McDonald's, line out the parking lot. Every fast food place I passed, I had to pay past 6, had a line at 10 o'clock in the morning. Who is eating a Big Mac at 10 o'clock in the morning?
Bitch, you already know if you texted me and asked if I wanted a Big Mac at 10 in the morning, I'd say yes. Lord knows one thing about me.
But we're trash.
Yes, we are trash. And one thing about me is I love fast food and I will eat it anytime, anywhere. I am a fast food girly down. Get into a Whopper.
So
okay?
during this break, McDonald's.
I'm fine with whatever happens.
Awesome. I think it's come to that point of Paul's Pop Culture Corner.
Time for Paul's Pop Culture Corner. And today we are going to be talking about Nikado avocado.
Yes.
And
yes, I've heard.
You're on the internet. You know he's skinny now. Now, for background, what Nikado avocado did, he weighed probably 200 or 300 pounds. And
closer to 3. Not being mean.
Yeah. And he filmed 2 years worth of videos. So it looked like he was still bigger.
Well, his whole thing was doing these outrageous mukbangs.
Exactly.
Where he was
eating a ton of food. Yeah, and he got very big. And he pre-filmed 2 years worth of videos to make it seem like he was still big. And he took that 2 years to lose all that weight. And then all of a sudden he posted a video, skinny as fuck. That shit was crazy. And he did it all serial killer style. He was like, I'm always 2 steps ahead of everyone. No one can test me, blah, blah, blah. And it was honestly kind of, I don't know. I felt uncomfortable watching it a little bit. I felt like he was going to attack me or something. It was spooky. But I mean, good for him for losing the weight. And honestly, that's fucking iconic. That's how you do the internet. And if you know anything about filming videos, filming 2 years worth of videos, that had to have taken months and months and months of preparing and planning and all. It's crazy.
You and me know that. When they all see this, it's going to be 2025, whereas we're back here in 2022.
Well, what are you talking about?
I was trying to make a joke.
Okay.
It didn't land. We're both hungover.
But anyway, go check out these Nikado avocado videos, because he did the internet right. That shit's crazy. Low-key stan now. I might check out some of his vlogs. Maybe I'll report back. We'll see what happens with that. Nothing else really to report today. Next week, I'll talk a little bit about the VMAs. And then, yeah, so that's enough of Paul's Pop Culture Corner. Tell us a little bit about Joe Locke.
Absolutely. So, we all know that in Heartstopper, Charlie Spring and Ben Hope, his in-the-closet ex-lover, have a pretty contentious relationship, especially after Charlie meets Nick.
Yeah.
But, did you know off-screen, Joe Locke, who plays Charlie, is actually in real life best friends with Sebastian Croft, who plays Ben Hope.
Well, if you watch Sebastian on TikTok, he seems like a lot of fun. And
oh my gosh, Sebastian is so cute and so sweet. Oh.
Yeah, he seemed 10 out of 10, would date, would husband up, would wife up. Honestly,
I don't think there's a single person in the Heartstopper universe that I would not wife up.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of someone I wouldn't, but I can't.
Darcy's mom,
yes.
Darcy's mom and maybe Charlie's mom. She was kind of a bitch this last season.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens this season. This season's about to get very intense from what I gather.
I kind of know because I read the books and Paul's going in blind.
Yeah, I've seen a few clips on TikTok. I know this comes out once this video comes out, it'll be out in 2 weeks. I think it comes out October 3rd.
Yes.
So I'm very excited for that. Very excited to watch that. Hopefully Sebastian and Joe release a spicy video. That would be fun to watch.
Oh my god!
Yeah. Did that really shock you?
A little bit.
And don't pretend you wouldn't watch it, bitch. Well, actually, never mind. I take that back. Because as long as it is released consensually, we do not watch spicy videos that are not released.
That are leaked.
Exactly. We do not watch leaks.
We do not stand revenge porn. If you post revenge porn, you are scum.
Exactly. So, all you little people out there Googling leaked videos of whatever celebrity, it's time to stop in 2024, okay? They did my girl Pamela Anderson dirty, okay? They did my girl Kim dirty, okay? We're not doing that no more, okay?
I think Kim actually came out on top.
She benefited from that. But during the time, it was probably a rough situation, okay? So we're not doing that no more.
Now while we're at it, down with big porn.
What?
Down with big porn. Let's support these independent creators on OnlyFans and Just for Fans. Support your small businesses.
Exactly. Support small businesses.
Because, yes, I know, and this is just such a tangent, but while we're on it, yes, if you are a porn actor, you get paid very well.
Yes.
But you have to think that, unless you're really big, you're probably not getting your residuals.
No, you're not. That's not a thing, I don't think.
And here's the thing. So, yeah, you're getting paid a large lump sum at the beginning. But then how much money are the porn studios making after the fact through memberships and pay-per-view?
Right. That's so true. I never even thought of that. That's crazy.
Whereas, if you're supporting an OnlyFans or Just for Fans creator, that money is going straight... yes... I'm sure OnlyFans is making something. But the bulk of it's going to the creator, which... Not that I, have an OnlyFans or anything. But, I'd rather my money go to the creator.
Yeah.
The person who's doing the work.
Exactly. That makes sense. I support that. That's so tea. That's so Julia.
Well, shall we drink?
Yes, let's get into the alcohol.
So, today... we're drinking from Haven's a 2021 black and blue, I think it's a red blend. Red blend.
Black and blue red blend.
It's from California. Haven's Winery was established in 1984 with sincere love and focus of showcasing the best of Napa Valley, utilizing rich volcanic soil and some of the best microclimates in the world. Haven's Winery has consistently produced award-winning wines.
You know what? I never realized before doing this podcast how many wines come from California.
California is the big wine producing region in the United States.
Oh, well, that makes sense because there's so many fucking wines from there. Jesus. But this wine, I like the way the bottle looks. It's very interesting.
Yes. And we will get into later why I picked this wine.
Period. I don't like the sound that makes when we're...
It's a synthetic cork. It's not a real cork from Portugal. The poor Portuguese wine, whatevers, but we're saving the world.
Ooh.
That was a good pop.
That was a good pop. Oh, girl. I found that one in my waters.
Cancelled. ASMR pour. There you are.
Thank you.
Excuse me while I go to the camera to get the visual ASMR.
This wine smells like it's going to be really good. I'm excited for this one.
It does smell very nice.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh. Oh, okay.
That is good. 5 grapes.
Let me give her one more taste. That is a good wine. That is 5 grapes. That is the perfect blend of dry and fruity. I like kind of the grapey aftertaste.
Yeah.
That wine, that is a good wine. That is right up there with the... What's the one we had 2 weeks ago that we usually like? Oh, jeez. It's like Inferno or something.
Yeah, Pothic Inferno.
Yeah, it's right up there with that.
Yes.
5 grapes. Get into that.
All right, Paul. Let me tell you a story. It's a plot we are all familiar with by now. Family moves into their dream home. The dream home is a nightmare and is haunted by a multitude of ghosts. And what's worse is the spirit of a witch who's trying to possess the mother of the family. Yes, The Conjuring has cemented itself as a staple of the horror film genre. But what's even scarier is that it's based on a true story. But what is that true story? What really happened? Today we're going to find out how the true story behind The Conjuring is scarier than fiction.
Period.
We are doing The Conjuring House, also called the Perron Family Haunting, the Burrillsville Haunting, the Harrisville Haunting, but probably most known now as The Conjuring Haunting.
That's right, kids. Just like every other paranormal podcast in the world, we're covering The Conjuring House.
Now, before we get into this, I do want to shout out Andrea Perron, who was the oldest daughter of the family. She wrote a 3-volume memoir on the experience called House of Darkness, House of Light.
Wait, is that the name of all 3 of those fucking books?
Yes, it's 3 volumes.
They couldn't come up with another goddamn title?
It's 1 memoir in 3 books.
Okay, it's like The Lord of the Rings. Okay.
It's kind of like, yeah. Or like Winston Churchill called his memoirs My Memoirs, and then each one had like a subtitle.
Well, that's real fucking original.
Yeah.
You'd think someone as smart as Winston Churchill would have came up with some shit more clever
Was he
than that.
smart or was he bold?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know anything about Winston Churchill. Just that he was politics or something, but... Was he with this country, or was he with the UK?
What do you think? With a name like Winston Churchill.
I think we're children of the earth, and I think we're all just from the planet. And you know what? No matter where Winston Churchill was from, he's our brother of the planet. And that's why I should be your next Miss America. Thank you.
You're going to be really pissed. The answer is actually both.
Period. See, I was right. Get into it. Yes, we're learning, bitch.
His father was British and he was born in England, but his mother was an American.
See, I know some shit. I know a little bit. I learned about him in history. I don't remember much, but I learned about it.
I could just sit here and try to, just ask you history questions and watch you fumble all day, but we're going to talk about The Conjuring.
Let's get into The Conjuring. Let's get into the spook.
So thank you, Andrea. You were a huge help with the research. Your books are a wealth of knowledge, and honestly, if you've watched The Conjuring, you're getting maybe 1% of the true story. Go out and get these books.
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot in those books. Bitch had a lot to say.
Each one is about 500 pages long, so that's 1,500 pages of hauntings.
And you read all that?
I skimmed all of it.
Yeah, that's a lot to read. I won't read all that shit either.
Now, I have 2 pieces of advice going into this episode. First, if you've seen The Conjuring, forget it. Like I said, The Conjuring movie is 1% of this whole haunting. So just forget it, because we're going to, go deep. And second of all, suspend your understanding of linear time. I'm going to try and keep the story as chronological as possible, but the family experienced a lot of time slips, and so there were times where, they slipped in of time, out of time, there were time halts. Andrea kept describing it as being in a bubble.
That's interesting, actually.
Where, you'd be in this bubble where time just seemed to stop until somebody popped it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, especially when reading the books, Andrea will be talking about, my sister Cindy was well, she wrote it in third person. But she'll be like, Cindy was experiencing this when she was 8 years old. And then when she was 15 years old, the same thing happened. And it's just because she wrote it according to haunting and not necessarily. Well, on Tuesday, this happened.
Okay, that makes sense.
And she said living there was a sense of timelessness where you didn't know if it was 1971 or 1871 or 1771.
Okay. I know theories are going to be a big, like, part of this, but what if they had, like, a gas leak or something that made them, like, hallucinated?
We'll get into that later.
Okay.
But let's get into the story. In the first week of January 1971, the Perron family moved into a 9-bedroom farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island.
Damn, 9 bedrooms. That would be nice.
I think it was 9 bedrooms. I kept saying 9-room and 14-room. So I've made this executive decision to present it as a 9-bedroom house and that it had 14 rooms overall.
Damn, 9 bedrooms. That'd be nice. But they had a lot of kids, so... They only had 5. You're going to tell us that.
The family consisted of Roger and Carolyn Perron and their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, her real name's Cynthia, but pretty much through the whole book she goes by Cindy, and April. And I believe that's in order of birth. The move was spurred on by trouble the family experienced in their previous neighborhood in Cumberland, Rhode Island, which was a suburb of Providence.
Okay. Do you know what kind of trouble it was?
Yes.
Ooh.
Because it's actually a big part of the story.
Little Nancy started a drug ring.
So the reason why... No, it's funny you mentioned drugs, but because... So Roger and Carolyn moved into the neighborhood in 1964. It was a really cute, quaint place. It had good schools. They were looking to start a family. But by like 1969, like the rest of America, it was just torn apart by the Cultural Revolution in the country, political assassinations, upheaval, Vietnam. And in their own neighborhood, they started to deal with problems with gangs and violence and break-ins.
Oh, damn.
And so our story really starts in Cumberland, Rhode Island, when the parents got a dog.
Oh, wait. So the haunting started before the Conjuring?
Just wait.
Okay.
So the family got a puppy, and it was, I can't remember the name of it. I'm going to check in the book right now. But it's a medium-sized dog. It's a very unique dog. It's an African...
Let's see if I can Google it. Well, actually, while you're Googling it, so probably...
Okay, here.
What?
It was an African Basenji.
An African Basenji, okay.
And they're small dogs. They are actually from the continent of Africa where they're used for rodent control.
Okay, period.
But they're really pretty dogs. They're on the small size of medium. And really uniquely, they don't bark.
That is really interesting. A quiet dog.
But anyways, it's a very unique dog. And the girls loved the dog. And Carolyn really loved the dog, the mother. And Carolyn decided that this very special dog needed to have a very special name. And so she thought, and out of her head, she pulled the name Bathsheba.
Wait, they named the dog Bathsheba?
They named the dog Bathsheba.
Oh, shit. We can't talk too much. We don't want to give too much away. But later on, we're going to find out why that's crazy.
So the family loved Bathsheba, and one day the girls said to their parents, "Can we please take Bathsheba out for a walk?" And Andrea's like 10 at this point, and she's a very responsible girl. She describes herself in the book several times as mom's little helper. Mm-hmm. Like, she was always helping with her siblings. Like, the siblings really got along. She was very mature for her age.
Right.
And so Carolyn's like, yeah, totally. Like, just be careful. And so they're walking down the street. They've got Bathsheba on the leash when a car full of cheerleaders and football players goes driving by, and they have their pom-poms and they're shouting, they're playing their music. And Bathsheba is kind of intrigued by this, and so she runs out into the road after the car. Mm-hmm. And Andrea and the girls are screaming because their dog just ran into the road after a car.
Right.
But Bathsheba runs clear to the other side of the street.
Okay.
And so she's fine.
Okay.
Everything's fine. And so Bathsheba's a very obedient dog. So Andrea says, Bathsheba, come back, come back. And so Bathsheba does, but she runs right in front of a car being driven by an older couple.
Damn.
And the leash gets caught up in one of the wheels.
Oh my god. What the fuck?
And this is happening in front of the girls.
Girl, that's
the
crazy.
youngest of whom is like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And Bathsheba is horribly mangled but still alive.
What the fuck? That's awful.
And the police come and they tell the girls, like, get out of here, go home. And as they're running home, they hear 2 gunshots.
That is... I don't even want to think about that. We have to move on because animal death makes me sad. That's crazy.
So...
What the
Andrea really took this to heart. She really loved this dog, and she felt it was her fault, and she sunk into a depression. She stopped playing outside. She stopped playing with her siblings. So Roger and Carolyn, they ended up adopting 4 cats, 2 beautiful Siamese cats. You've seen Siamese cats, right?
Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah, they're beautiful with the blue eyes, and they've got that beautiful, like, vanilla blonde fur with the black-gray tips.
Yeah,
they're beautiful.
They're designer cats.
But they're beautiful.
Yeah, designer cats.
And they also had 2 strays that they adopted. Oh my god, what was...
They have a lot of pets. Jesus.
Yes.
2 more strays? Girl, I mean, I catch a few strays at the bar sometimes, but that's a different story.
2 strays. It was Juliet, who was a mom, and her kitten named Scrunch.
Oh, I love the name Scrunch.
And Andrea was just absolutely in love with the cats, especially Scrunch.
Mm-hmm.
But they also decided that they were going to take the family on a little vacation. And they asked Carolyn's mother to watch the cats in the house while they were away.
Okay.
And so they come home, and the first thing Roger notices is the door to their sun porch is open.
Oh.
But no one's home.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can see that his mother-in-law's car isn't there.
Okay.
And he's looking around and he sees something sitting on their picnic table. And before he can stop Andrea, she goes running to the picnic table and she finds Scrunch's lifeless body.
So, like, someone came in and killed the cat?
They go inside and they find... So, Scrunch is dead.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into what happened to it, but it was not natural causes.
Oh my god.
They go inside. The house is destroyed. Mirrors are shattered. Furniture is overturned. All the kitchen cupboards were emptied and all the food was dumped on the floor. The refrigerator was open and, like, all the shelves were ripped out and it was left open. And in the basement, they had one of those big freezers, like the chest freezers, full of meat. Mm-hmm. It was, like, beaten. The lid was ripped off its hinges. All the meat was thrown out and was all spoiled.
So someone broke in and fucked their house up.
Yes.
That's awful.
And they couldn't find the 2 Siamese cats. And the only one they could find was Juliet, who had been beaten and, like, obviously, like, had fought for her life to escape, hiding in the bushes outside. That's
so sad. That really, like, yeah, okay, break in, but why do you have to hurt the animals? Like, people are fucking sick.
And Andrea says in the book that it was really weird because they had a neighbor next door who had 3 boys, and they were always making noise while they played, and it was deathly silent when they got home. And one of the boys was just staring out the window. And
why didn't that boy do something? Why didn't he tell someone?
Because another neighborhood boy, a couple days later, comes to the Perron home and says, you know, I feel really bad about it. It was the boys next door to your house. They wanted to do it, and I knew they were going to do it, and I didn't stop them, and I feel really bad.
So it was some kids?
It was some kids.
Some children did all that shit? That's crazy.
And
what the fuck?
Their mother, the next door neighbor's mother, like, my boys didn't do that. My boys are, like, perfectly good. And I can just imagine her, this is just my imagining. I imagine she's in a ratty bathrobe, hair in curlers, smoking a cigarette. Her living room is full of takeout containers and beer cans. And she's just like, I don't know why you're blaming my boys. Boys, you didn't fucking do nothing, did you? See, I told you they didn't do fucking nothing.
Oh my god, if that was me, I'd light that bitch up.
I have no proof that that's what that woman was like, but that's just what comes to mind.
Oh, I'd light that bitch up. I would.
So Andrea, now remember, Andrea's traumatized from Bathsheba's death. And now two of her cats are missing. And it's probably for the best that we don't know what happened to them.
Yes. Very that.
One of them we know has been brutally murdered, and the other one was beaten within an inch of her life.
Right.
So Andrea is just filled with rage.
Yes.
Oh. So one day later that week, she catches the ringleader without his brothers, who kind of acted like bodyguards, and she found out that he was the ringleader. And she ambushed him. Period. And she started punching on him. And she, they were the same size, they were the same age, but because she had the element of surprise, she's landing every single punch and kick.
Get her, girl. Fuck him up.
And she did not stop until a neighbor saw and pulled her off and sent her home. And that boy was beaten within an inch of his life. And Andrea admits in the book that she felt awful because she failed. Because she planned on murdering him that day.
And honestly, relatable. Because if you're sick enough to do something like that to animals, you deserve everything you have coming to. Anyone who hurts animals is sick and twisted, and fuck that.
So, already, Roger and Carolyn are like, what the fuck? And honestly, at this point, what else can go wrong?
Right, they have to. I don't blame them for moving out of that house because already there's so much trauma associated with that house.
Well, I'm going to tell you what else can go wrong.
Oh my god.
When they first moved in, Carolyn built a little rock garden at the edge of their driveway.
Yeah.
And the centerpiece of it was this large, it was like a slab rock, and everyone, the whole family and friends teased her, calling it the tombstone. Because it sat upright and it was tall and skinny and slim, so it looked like a tombstone.
Right, period, yeah.
Well, one morning, shortly after this, one of their neighbors was getting into his truck when he suffered a massive heart attack and died. And when he died, he slumped forward and he pressed the accelerator of the car. And he kept driving until the car crashed into the tombstone, which stopped it. At which point it was halted, but the wheels were still spinning. And so Roger and Caroline go running out there, and Roger's trying to help this guy, not realizing he's dead. When the neighbor next door with the children comes running out and starts yelling, "You have a graveyard for a yard! You have a graveyard for the yard!"
What the fuck?
Yeah, she's standing on the porch yelling at Carolyn.
That's insane. They need to get out of there. They should have left there yesterday. They need to get out of there.
And so the ambulance comes and they take the man away and they tow the truck away. And Carolyn goes inside and she's talking to Roger and she's like, this is really not good. And he's like, don't worry. And he has to go on a business trip. He's a traveling jewelry salesman, so he does a lot of traveling for work. Okay. And Carolyn does what a nice person does. She makes a cake and she takes it to the man's widow. I'm so sorry this happened to your husband. And the woman says, I don't want your cake. I think you're a witch and I think you cursed my husband so that he would die.
Oh,
so I don't want your cake and I don't want you coming anywhere near me.
That's insane.
And Carolyn goes home and she's sobbing. Her next door neighbor is saying she has a graveyard for a yard. Her house has been vandalized. Her kids' pets have been brutally massacred.
Word.
Her daughter is getting into fistfights.
Well, it wasn't much of a fight, more as a beating.
Yes. Her daughter's trying to become an assassin.
Right. Her daughter's fucking up the neighborhood boys.
my hands are called Lethal and Weapon.
Right. Bitch. Lethal Weapon 1, 2, 3, and 4 was about that bitch. She stood on business.
So Roger comes home, and they get into this huge fight because Carolyn's like, we have to move. And Roger's like, we can't afford it.
Oh.
And she's like, can we at least look to find something, like I'll take anything. Like, I want to move to the country where it's quiet, where it's safe, where our girls are protective. And Roger's like, no, we don't have the money. And he's like, and she's like, please, Roger. He's like, no, and I have to go on another business trip.
Oh, we know what he was doing on those business trips.
Well, no, like I said, he was a traveling jewelry salesman, so he was gone quite a bit.
He was definitely spreading the family jewels, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So, Carolyn, actually, so what happens is, it's totally by accident. She's waiting for Andrea to get done with a music lesson. Mm-hmm. And she got there a little too early and she has nothing to do, so she buys a local newspaper to while away the time. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't get very far into it because Andrea comes out and she has to go home and take care of the girls and
and she couldn't read.
And after dinner, she opens it up and she sees a section called Land and Farms for Sale.
Oh.
And she goes, it doesn't hurt to look. Mm-hmm. And she finds a listing for a 14-bed or a 9-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, on 200 acres with barn included.
Barn included?
$75,000.
Okay, period, sis.
200 acres.
200 acres?
For $75,000.
Girl, there must be something going on there. That land has to be cursed or some shit for that much land for that cheap.
And Carolyn's like, this is too good to be true.
Right.
And she's like, I shouldn't do this, but she picks up the phone at 9:00 at night in the 70s. And she calls the listing agent and says, I'd really like to see this house. And the listing agent's like, fabulous. Can you meet me at my office tomorrow?
Okay, period.
And so Carolyn arranges for a babysitter and she drives out with the listing agent. And she gets there and she immediately falls in love. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And the owner is this lovely older gentleman named Mr. Kenyon. And he's super nice and he's telling her about the place and how, like, oh, that beautiful apple tree. There used to be 7 others, but they were all destroyed in the hurricane of 1938. This barn wasn't destroyed because it was built by a shipbuilder, so it was built to sway in the wind, and it's super sturdy, and he's like telling her all about it. And at the end, he takes her hand and he looks in her eyes and he goes, you know, this is a wonderful place to raise a family. And Carolyn turns to the listing agent and she says, how much do I have to pay you to reserve this property?
Oh, she went behind her husband's back.
And she wrote out a check there on the spot for $500, which was practically the couple's entire bank account.
Girl, how are they going to pay for the house if all they got was $500?
So, Roger comes home.
Yes.
Is pissed.
Well, yeah. She went behind his back and bought a whole fucking house.
But she's like, Roger, you just come out and see it with me. Just come out and see it. And, like, if not, I'm sure they'll give us the deposit back. Mm-hmm. So they go out there. Immediately, Roger falls in love. Mm-hmm. They took the girls with them. The girls are in love. They're running through these fields and playing in the yard. And Mr. Kenyon has candy for them. Mm-hmm. And he's just like... And they love Mr. Kenyon. He's like cracking jokes and telling them things. And they just all fall in love. And there's this like creek where it's like super still. And Roger like wades in it, and they called it the Fountain of Youth. Mm-hmm. Because there was just something magical about it. And that's the thing, they kept describing it as it was a magical place.
Yeah, well, they will come to find out. It is magic. There's some magic there, whether it's good or bad. But...
And towards the end of the visit, Mr. Kenyon takes Roger aside, and he goes, I don't want to leave this property, but I have to. My son's making me. He's built me another house for me to live in now that I'm older.
Right.
But if I have to leave, I want this place to go to you and your family and no one else. And I'm going to do whatever it takes for you to get it. I don't care how long it takes. You are the only people I'm selling this house to.
Okay, this is all sounding like too idyllic. What if this guy was really just trying to get rid of this house, right? And he was just playing the family, telling them what they want to hear.
Well, it would take them 5.5 months to save up and then borrow some money to buy the property.
Right.
But they bought it in early December, and Carolyn said, I don't want to move in over the holidays. So let's have one last Christmas here in Cumberland, and then we'll move first week of January. And Mr. Kenyon, you can stay rent-free in the house.
Oh, period.
And it's awesome. And during that 5.5 months, every day, Carolyn is racked with panic that somebody is going to show up and that they're going to buy the house out from under them. Mm-hmm. And it would not be until much later that Mrs. Herzog, the listing agent, would tell them that Carolyn called the day the article first ran, the ad first ran in the paper.
Oh.
She was the first and only person to ever call on that ad.
It's all sounding like there's something they don't know about this property that everyone else is aware of. Like they're not in on something that's going on there.
So, like I said, they move in first week of January during a snowstorm. It's Rhode Island. Are we really surprised there's a snowstorm?
Right.
And they get there, and Mr. Kenyon has cookies and hot chocolate for them, but he's still not all the way packed. Mm-hmm. He's in the dining room packing his wife's china as the family is moving boxes in. Mm-hmm. And so Carolyn goes to set up the kitchen, and Andrea says Mr. Kenyon hadn't even touched the kitchen, so her mother was unpacking their stuff. Mm-hmm. And she was like unpacking his stuff, or unpacking their stuff, taking his stuff, wrapping it in their stuff, and putting it in the boxes they brought.
Hey, reduce, reuse, recycle, girl.
Because, like, he just wasn't ready. Like, he did not want to leave. Mm-hmm. And, like, Andrea says in the book, like, he was, like, so sad.
Well, it is sad moving out of a house you've lived in for, like, ever, you know?
And so Carolyn took April, the baby, she's 5 years old, into the kitchen with her. And the other 4 girls were helping their father unload boxes.
Okay.
And Andrea walks in the front door through the foyer, and she says, hello, Mr. Kenyon. And there's a strange man with him, and she goes, good morning. And he doesn't respond. He's just looking at Mr. Kenyon with this sort of sad smile. Mm-hmm. And she goes to the kitchen, she says, Mom, who's that man with Mr. Kenyon? She says, I don't know, maybe his son. And she goes, no, like, we've met his son, that's not his son. And she's like, I don't know, it's a neighbor.
Okay.
And Andrea's like, he was like a totally normal man. And then Christine comes in and goes, Mom, who's that man with Mr. Kenyon? And Carolyn's like, I don't know. And Andrea's like, I saw him too. And Christine goes, he kind of looked a little funny, didn't he? And then Nancy comes in and goes, Mom, who's that man with Mr. Kenyon? And Carolyn's like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. And Andrea and Christine are like, we saw him too. And Nancy's like, he was kind of like faded. And then Cindy walks in.
He was smoking up. He was faded.
Cindy walks in and goes, "Y'all, did you see that man with Mr. Kenyon? He disappeared!"
Bitch, that's crazy. Did not one of them say anything to Mr. Kenyon about this man that's standing?
Well, then Roger's like, "Girls, you're supposed to be helping me." So they go back in the dining room, and Mr. Kenyon's still, like, doing his china, and Roger walks in, and he sees Mr. Kenyon, like, going very slowly.
Yeah.
And he goes up to Mr. Kenyon, and he goes, "I know you don't want to leave. This place is huge. You can stay with us. Please stay with us. We will make room for you."
He offered some man he's known for like a couple months to live with him.
Like 6 months. He's known them for 6 months.
Even then, that doesn't sit right with me.
And Mr. Kenyon, like, tears up and he's like, "I can't. Like, my son's bought me a new house, built me a new house. I can't. But thank you." And while they're having this conversation, the girls watch as this man reappears in the foyer.
Bitch, that's creepy. That's spooky. I love that.
Move-in day. Move-in day.
Well, that's giving more a spirit that's attached to Mr. Kenyon that's, like, watching over him, and it's sad he's leaving.
So, Mr. Kenyon gets all packed up, and he says to Roger, "Can, like, walk out with me?" And they walk out on the porch, and he looks at Roger, and he says, "For the sake of your family, leave the lights on at night."
See, he did know some shit that's going down there.
And Roger's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Okay, it's a big old house. It was built in, oh my god, I totally, like, skipped over the whole history of the property.
Well, time for
Time
history.
to backtrack.
Sorry.
Death and blood and doom and gloom. This is DJ's History Corner.
Jesus Christ. I hate it here. I'm calling the police.
I'm still workshopping it. We will come up with it. So, yes, the property was very old. The property was called the Arnold Estate. It was part of the original Providence Plantations and was deeded to the Richardson family in 1680. The house was built in 1736 and is rumored to be part of the Underground Railroad.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at your little jingle.
Death and doom and gloom and blood. It's DJ's History Corner.
Ding.
I'm still workshopping it.
We'll get there.
So
Underground Railroad.
Yes. It became known as the Arnold Estate because very early on it passed by marriage from the Richardson family to the Arnold family. In all, it was owned by 8 generations of the same family from 1680 up until 1971 when the Perrons moved in. So from the Richardsons to Mr. Kenyon, it was one family.
That's why he's so sad. That's like so much family history. Like, that makes so much sense.
And so, old house, very old house. Yeah. So Roger's like, oh, narrow, steep staircases. He's worried about the girls, like, coming down to get a glass of water, go to the bathroom, and falling down the stairs. Whatever.
I'll watch out for that little girl who was beating people up. Push some people down the stairs next. Jesus.
Lethal weapon.
She's coming. Hello.
By the end of the night, they all had rooms picked out and beds set up. And it was divided up so that Andrew would have her own room as the eldest. And then Nancy and Christine sharing one, and then Cindy and April sharing one, and of course Carolyn and Roger sharing the main bedroom. We don't say master bedroom anymore.
I didn't know that, but now I can see why you don't say it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know the story behind it, but I can imagine now
the connotation of slavery.
Yeah, I never thought of that before, but now I know.
I didn't think about it until somebody pointed out as to why we say main bedroom now, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah, it does make sense now.
In the middle of the night, Cindy climbed into bed with Andrea and said, "There's people all around my bed and they keep whispering the same thing at the same time over and over again.
What the fuck?
There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall. There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall."
Wait, okay. So they're whispering this to Andrea?
No, to Cindy.
To Cindy, okay.
So, Andrea, she's like 10, 13, somewhere in there. She's like, yeah, just get into bed and go to sleep. Brushes off. But later on, she states that there was not a single night in 10 years that Cindy spent in that house where she did not hear, "There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall."
See, that sounds crazy. It sounds a little bit like schizophrenia, too. But that sounds wild. If that was actual spirits whispering to her every night, you would imagine at some point, bitch would be like, "Okay, I get it. They're in the walls. Jesus Christ."
So the family settles in, and they don't really notice anything too crazy. The house creaks, and like some of the doors just open and close on themselves, and sometimes like, there's weird noises, but
It's an old house.
it's an old house.
Settling.
Who hasn't lived in an old house?
Exactly. Period.
And after a month of living there, Mr. Kenyon came for a visit.
Yeah.
And he's welcomed by the whole family. They're overjoyed to see him. Like, they think of him as a friend at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And during the visit, he looks at Carolyn very seriously and he says, "Is everything all right here?"
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Yeah, everything's fine." And he leans and he goes, "Any problems?" And she's like really weirded out. And she's like, "Well, this house is freezing. I am always cold. Like, I cannot get warm. How did you deal with it? And like, I wish we had all the fireplaces open. Why did you ever board them up?"
Right.
"I don't know." He's like, I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Roger was like, he was like, "Yeah, like there's a lot of weird noises, like the wind, I guess it gets trapped in the chimney and it sounds like something's in there." And Mr. Kennedy goes, "Birds." And he looks at Carol and goes, "Birds." And winks at her.
What the fuck? That man's crazy.
And she's like, "Birds?" And he's like, "Yes, birds. That's why I did it. Birds."
Okay, girl. Okay, maybe he is older, so maybe he has like early onset Alzheimer's or dementia or something. So maybe he really just didn't remember why he boarded up the fireplaces, and then he remembered, oh yeah, birds. There's explanations for everything. I love the paranormal explanations, but hey, he's an older guy,
No, he was like being evasive. Like, I don't know. It just had to be done. They were old. Yes, birds. That was it. Birds. Definitely birds.
He's being shady again.
Then the couple asked him if he had a proper set of keys because they just had a hodgepodge collection and none of them fit any of the locks. And he says, no, there was one set, but they were lost years ago. And they said, does your son have any? And he says, no, you won't need them. No one will come out to bother you.
See, that doesn't sit right with me. Living in a house you don't have any keys to, and you bought it from someone. I would be paranoid and think that old man has keys to the house that he's not giving you, and he's breaking in or something. That doesn't sit right with me. I would change the locks.
So, shortly after Mr. Kenyon's visit, Roger had to go back out on the road, and while he was away, activity started to ramp up.
Ooh, like sexual activity? Were the parents trying for another child?
No, Roger went on a
trip. I thought you meant Mr. Kenyon left. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Kenyon left, and then like a day or so later, Roger had to go on the road.
Okay. I'm caught up now.
It all started one day when Carolyn was...
Can I make a side note real quick? What if they made a porn parody of Paranormal Activity and called it Sexual Activity?
Canceled.
She gets banged by the ghost.
Canceled.
Okay, we could get back to our regular scheduled programming.
So it actually started one day. So the girls would go to school, and Carolyn, when she'd finished with her chores, she'd like curl up in the living room with a book, and April would like play. And it was like really nice because like sometimes she would go upstairs to check on April, and sometimes April would come downstairs to check on her. Sometimes April would come down to play. Sometimes Carolyn would go up to read. But on this instance, Carolyn is sitting on the couch and she's reading, and she can hear footsteps across the ceiling. She's like, okay, that's April. And then April goes, hi, Mommy, right next to her while the footsteps are going overhead.
Oh, that's spooky.
And so Carolyn goes running upstairs, searches every room.
Yeah.
No one's there.
Okay.
And there's no way for anyone to have gotten in.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like real freaked out, but she's like, okay. And she puts April down for a nap. And she goes into the kitchen. She makes herself a cup of coffee, and she feels like there's something there in the room with her. And she starts feeling really nauseous. And so she pushes the cup away, and she puts her head down. And she takes a couple deep breaths. And she lifts her head up. And the room is ice cold. Her coffee's ice cold. She looks at the clock. The clock has stopped. She checks her watch. 2 hours have gone by.
That's weird.
She goes in the living room and she puts another blanket on April because it's ice cold in the house. And she sees the rest of the girls coming. And so she goes on the porch and she goes, April's taking a nap. Everyone be quiet and I'll get you hot cocoa and cookies. Mm-hmm. And so the girls say, yeah, okay. And they're all sitting in the kitchen, drinking their hot cocoa and cookies. And April comes in and she goes, who did that? Who shook me awake?
Girl, someone's shaking her awake? That's so spooky.
Going back to the clock, this was Roger's pride and joy. It was an antique clock that he inherited from his father. It kept perfect time until they moved into the house, where it would just stop at 5:15 every morning. And Roger actually moved it like to multiple walls to see if like one of the walls was unbalanced because it was the pendulum clock. Mm-hmm. And like if the pendulum can't swing right, it will unwind. Mm-hmm. Nope. And finally they were just like, forget it. And that clock would never run until they moved. And they just were like, let's see. And it never lost time again.
So it was uneven.
No, like it just, no matter where they put it in this house, it would not work. But they moved it to another house and it started working again.
Oh, that's weird.
Their pets would avoid certain places in the house. Juliet had to be dragged in. And there was not a time that Juliet lived there where she was not on end and on alert. And she just walked into rooms and hissed at nothing.
I bet you avoided Little Miss Lethal Weapon's room too. Wouldn't look her in the eyes or nothing.
I think she loved Little Miss Lethal Weapon. They had a new dog, whom they named, or it was a German Shepherd mix that they named Rebecca. And Rebecca would refuse to go through the foyer. Mm-hmm. Even to take meals. She would scratch. So it's an old house, and you can see in the picture on the front of the book, there are multiple doors. Mm-hmm. She would scratch to be let out of the living room. They called it the parlor. Okay. She'd be scratched to be let out at mealtime. Walk around the house to the back door. Scratch to be left in. Take her meal. And then repeat. And Roger's like, this is ridiculous. So one day, he threw a raw steak on the floor in the dining room across the foyer from the living room. It was like, Rebecca, go get it. And she just laid there and whined and whimpered. She would not go to get a raw steak. A dog not eating a raw steak.
Yeah, dogs love raw steaks.
The girls also started to notice all of these things, and they were heaping it on Andrea. And eventually Andrea did go to Carolyn, who was also noticing it, and they took it to Roger. Roger was adamant that there was nothing strange about their new house. It was just old, creaky, dark, with squeaky floors, loose clapboards, and chimneys where the wind got stuck. Mm-hmm. But soon, the activity started to escalate. Mm-hmm. Every door in the house had its own personality. Some would open and close on their own. Some would just be held shut when you tried to open it. Some would rattle. Some, the doorknobs would like especially the pantry door, which was notorious because it would swing open and close like all the time, like violently. Mm-hmm. So they decided that they were going to put a heavy desk in front of the door. The door continued to swing open and push the desk out of the way.
Okay, that's when you leave. That's when you know it's time to move out. If the ghosts are pushing the fucking desks out the way, it's time to get out of there, girl.
Well, oddly enough, the girls came to love their doors and their unique personalities, thinking them as pets. It'd be like, the bathroom door's stuck again, and it's like, oh, the bathroom door.
Oh, it's giving Brady Bunch.
Or like, who left the pantry door open? Oh, the pantry door, always opening.
God, it's just the cute little undead ghosts that are haunting and torturing our family. So cute.
And then things started to go missing. Toys, clothes, books would all be put down.
My virginity.
Yes. But the thing about this is they turn around and it would be gone. But then it would appear somewhere really weird, which you're never getting your virginity back.
Yeah, that was taken a long.
Was it taken or was it given?
That's up for debate.
But it caused a lot of... At first, it started a lot of fights because, like, 5 girls...
It was very freely given. It was very, very freely given. And Lord knows, if you know me, it was very, very freely given at an Arby's. You're welcome. You can get back to it. I'm sorry, I had to clarify.
So, the stuff disappearing caused a lot of fights. Because it's like, did you take my toy? Where's my toy? And, like, it'd be gone for, like, weeks. And then they would find it, like, shoved in a crevice or behind somebody's bed or in a kitchen cupboard. Just, why is it there? Or Adri says, like, there was one time where somebody's sweater was stolen. It was found behind one of the girls' beds. And it was like, you had it this entire time. And she's like, I didn't put it there. I don't even like that sweater.
Oh, that's weird.
Because it was like, you took my sweater. And it's like, no, I don't even like it.
Mm-hmm. That's what girls do, though. They steal each other's sweaters and things. That's a sister thing.
Now, Roger was the brunt of this at one point when he was home. He was, like, walking through the living room, and he had a pair of nail clippers, and he set it down on a table, and he turned around to say something, and when he turned around, the nail clippers were gone. And he just blew his top, like, who fucking took the nail clippers? Which one of you took them? Where are they? Where are they? And the girls are like, none of us took them. And Carolyn's like, I didn't take them. And he's like, you're lying. Which one of you took them? And Nancy had enough. And she says, quote, look, Dad, this happens to us all the time. We don't blame each other. It's just the way it is in this house.
Girl, that's crazy. It would be frustrating, though. But also, that's giving a little fairies, because fairies like to steal things and things like that. So it's giving Faye a little bit.
And it really shut Roger up. And there was at no point where Roger really was open to what was going on in the house. Mm-hmm. And there'd be times where he'd just get irrationally angry, and somebody had to be like, it happens all the time. It happens to us too. Get over it.
Right.
And then there was an infestation of flies.
Common demons. Lots of demons. Yeah. That happens a lot with demons.
In the middle of winter, all these flies came out of nowhere. They would have exterminators come out. The exterminators would kill them. And then a swarm would come, like, within an hour of the exterminator leaving.
Side note again. So it also sounds a little bit like the family might be, like, hexed. It's interesting the neighbor brought up witchcraft. What if the neighbor was actually the witch and she actually hexed the family or cursed or hexed them?
Maybe.
Now,
Roger became really obsessed with the flies. Like, he would just trying to kill them. Mm-hmm. But they'd always come back. Cindy was the first member of the family to make physical contact with the spirit. The school bus pulled her up one morning, and she realized she had left her books on Andrea's staircase, because I guess there were different staircases to get to different parts of the upstairs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And she was really kind of hesitant because Andrea's staircase always kind of scared her.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And she goes, and she's running back. And as she gets to the foyer, there's this smoky, misty person coming out of the cellar door. And before she can stop, boom, she slams through it. And she's like, she goes through it. It had this horrible smell of rotting flesh. And she falls over like she's hit a brick wall. And she's gasping and trying to catch her breath. And the bus driver's honking, and she catches her breath, and she goes out to the bus, and she can't get her energy. Like, she's just totally wiped out. She's 8 years old, running 1 minute, the next minute she can barely keep her head up. An hour later, she gets a call from the school nurse, or Carolyn gets a call from the school nurse to come pick up her daughter because she's falling asleep in class. And Carolyn picks her up, takes her home, puts her to bed, and she slept for 2 straight days and straight through the night.
That's giving demon. Like, someone, like, a demon stole her energy. Like, that's spooky.
Now, in the house, there was a large, heavy, old chalkboard. You know, the old ones on the, like, frame, and it could spin and was on wheels.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
And they loved it. And they would play school, and Andrew would be the teacher, and she'd write lessons on the board, and the girls would play it. But the thing is, they were all terrified of the house. So if one of the girls had to go to the bathroom, they all went to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And when they would come back, everything that was on the chalkboard would either be wiped clean, like somebody had come through with a wet cloth, or it'd be like somebody had gone like this through what was written, and it's all smeared and gone.
That would be so frustrating.
So Andrea had this idea that if it was out of the house, it would be safe and this would stop happening. So she asked Roger, will you help me move it into the woodshed? Mm-hmm. And this worked for a while, but then the same shit started happening.
Okay.
So they made a rule that one of the girls would always stay with the chalkboard till they got back. And this worked for a while until one day Roger went out to the woodshed to take the trash out. And he pulled up short. And he called Andrea. And Andrea walks in, and she's devastated to see the chalkboard has been thrown 20 feet down a flight of stairs. Mm-hmm. Is totally shattered. And the frame has been broken into, like, kindling wood.
They got stairs in their woodshed?
Well, I think the way she described it, because it's like the house is on a hill. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like there's stairs, the woodshed's attached to the house, and you have to go downstairs to it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Like there were multiple levels, like it was attached to the back of the house and there were 2 levels.
Okay, interesting.
Or maybe there was a loft and was thrown off the loft.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. There are no diagrams of like what the house layout was.
Okay.
Now, no human man could have done this because it was built out of solid oak. So how could little girls do this?
Right, so is the ghost, so is whatever is haunting them.
And it's really heartbreaking because Andrea says in her book that her heart was as broken as the shards of the chalkboard.
Oh my god.
She loved it.
Over a fucking chalkboard, girl. Okay, that's giving... Okay, we're doing a little too much.
Well, like, think of your favorite childhood toy.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if, like, one day you just came home and you found it destroyed.
Okay, yes. Whatever.
Now, as much strangeness as the entire family witnessed, much of it was benign, just seeking attention. Some of it was even helpful. But there was one undeniable target for all the bad in the house. Carolyn. The first sign was that she was perpetually cold, no matter how many layers she wore, blankets she was under, or how close she stood to the fireplace. Because one day, she was so cold, she just took an old crowbar and she ripped open a fireplace. Because it was like boarded up. Mm-hmm. She just ripped it open and she was opened the shit and she was like, let's build a fire.
She just had anemia.
And she would like constantly be standing super close to the fire and she still couldn't feel the warmth of it. And there was one time where she was standing so close, Roger was like, Carolyn, you're going to catch on fire. And at that moment, Carolyn, out of nowhere, fainted. And she would have caught on fire if, like, she fainted so close. Like, she fainted into the fireplace. Mm-hmm. And if Roger hadn't been staying there to go and grab her, she would have caught on fire and probably burned to death.
Oh, that's crazy. That's spooky.
Now, shortly after they moved in, Carolyn had the idea to bring animals to the farm. Mm-hmm. And she went out to the barn to see, okay, like, can we actually keep animals in here? And she walks in, and the first thing she notices is 30 feet above the ground, on the highest rafter, there's this scythe.
Okay.
And you know what a scythe is. That curved blade that you use to cut, like, weed and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hanging from the highest rafter, and she's like, I never noticed that, and why would anyone hang that up there?
Yeah, that's dangerous.
And so she's, like, walking around, and it's really cold, and she's like, oh, it's so fucking cold in here. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay. And she's done, and she starts walking, like, she starts to walk out of the barn when she hears fluttering, like there's birds up in the rafters. And she looks up, and she sees this scythe. It is no longer attached to the rafter, but it is spinning perfectly above her head.
Bitch, get out of there! That's crazy! That bitch is gonna die!
And before she can react, it turns and starts to plunge for her. And all she can think is, run. But she can't. She is frozen in place, paralyzed. And so all she can do is brace for impact when it slams across her neck and shoulder. And she takes the hit, and she steadies herself, and she sees it lying on the floor, and she reaches up, and there's no blood, just a bruise, because she wore so many layers of wool and a leather coat that it absorbed the sharpness of the blade. And so she's able to walk away with minor, like, some bruising, but the coat was destroyed. And she picked up that scythe and she tied it to a peg in the wall so that nobody could get at it again.
That's insane. That's so scary. That's like horror movie shit.
After the whole incident where she opened up the fireplace, it was while Roger wasn't home. Mm-hmm. And so she goes upstairs to take a shower because, like, she tore this fireplace apart by hand. Like, the wood on it. Mm-hmm. Because it was boarded up. And she, like, opened it by hand. Mm-hmm. And while she's in there, the neighbor, Mrs. Pettigrew, shows up with a cake.
Miss fucking Pettigrew.
She has 5 sons of her own, so she understands what Carolyn's going through, and she's heard that Roger's travels a lot for business, so she came over with this cake and to, like, offer a hand. And so the girls let her in, they go, Mom, the neighbor's here, and Carolyn's like, okay, I'll be right down. And she gets out of the shower, and she's trying to get dressed, when all of a sudden, this heavy wooden coat hanger lifts out of the closet and starts to beat her. And she starts screaming. And the girls and Mrs. Pettigrew go running up the stairs, and they run into the room to see Carolyn running around the bedroom with this hanger chasing after beating her.
Oh, that's crazy.
Before it just stopped, and Carolyn goes into shock and falls on the floor, and she is beaten black and blue.
Bitch, fuck you. Fuck you. Oh my god.
And so Mrs. Pettigrew, like, helps her, and, like, Carolyn, like, comes into shock, and it's like, are you all right, dear? And Carolyn's like, yes, thank you, it's just a lot. And Mrs. Pettigrew goes, okay, I'm gonna leave now. But you know what? The Kenyans kept the lights on overnight. All the lights. Every night. And with that, she leaves.
See, I was right. People know something they don't know, and they're not telling them.
And she never came back. Mrs. Pettigrew never came for another visit.
Well, that's just because she died.
Now, one night when Roger was home, she was awoken by the sound of footsteps. And so she thinks it's one of her daughters, and she goes, "Oh, what's wrong, honey?" And she doesn't hear anything, and she opens her eyes, and she sees this horrific sight of this woman. No hands, no feet, just this long, rusty green dress cinched at the waist with a belt buckle.
Body, okay. Snatched at the waist.
Her neck is crooked at an unnatural angle like it's been broken.
Ooh.
And it has no face, just a mass of rotting flesh and cobwebs like a rotting hornet's nest.
I don't like that. That's spooky.
She immediately sits up in bed and slams herself against the headboard, and it makes this huge noise, enough to like wake the living, the dead, but nobody stirs. And she's punching Roger, and Roger's not moving. And she's like, "Holy shit, my husband's dead and I'm next. Roger's dead and I'm next." And this creature starts moving towards her, getting closer and closer and closer. And Carolyn's opens her mouth and she's screaming, but nothing's coming out. And just before the creature gets right into her face to touch her, Carolyn goes, "God help me." And everything goes back to normal.
Okay. That's weird. That's spooky. It makes me wonder if the family that lived there before them for all those generations was cursed, and those are all the cursed souls of that family before them.
Now, that was the incident that made the girls and Carolyn realize they're having the same experience, because Carolyn kept a notebook of all of her experiences, and she marked this, and she left it in the living room, and Andrea saw it, and she looked at Carolyn, and she said, "You've seen her too?" And so Carolyn and the girls go to Roger and they're like, "We have to move out. We have to move." And he's like, "We just bought this house that we couldn't afford. We have no equity in it. We can't afford to move out. And besides, nothing's wrong. Like, we're staying."
Right. Oh, that's always the story. They move in and they never have money to move out.
And a lot of people say, like, why didn't they move out? And this is truly a case of they did not have the money. They sunk their entire life savings and then borrowed money to get this house.
And that's a life lesson for everyone.
And there's no way that they could sell it and then buy a new one, because they wouldn't have enough money left over. Like, they would just break even.
Nope.
Like, they would just break even enough to, like, maybe pay off the mortgage.
You know what?
Or whatever loans they took out for it.
Life lesson for everyone. Always have an exit plan.
Now, not only were they physically trapped, but mentally they're trapped, because they're dealing with this, and who can they tell? Who's going to believe them?
Who are they going to call?
Well,
Houdini.
I hate you. Now, one day, Keith and Carl Johnson, who were brothers and students from the University of New Haven, and who were part of an on-campus organization called the Paranormal Investigation and Research Organization, or PIRO.
Oh, whoops.
PIRO.
Damn.
Showed up. And now they were young paranormal investigators, part of this cultural organization, trying to get off the ground, and they put an ad in the newspaper like paranormal investigators. And one day they get a call from a Mrs. Carolyn Perron asking if they'll come to her Harrisville, Rhode Island farmhouse. And they knock on the door and they introduce themselves to Carolyn, and they say, like, "You called." And she goes, "What? I didn't call you. I don't know who you are, and I don't even read the newspaper you put that ad in."
That's wild. And they said, no, right here. It says horny MILFs.
But anyways, she's like, okay, but come in. Like, okay, maybe you can help me. And...
I'm so unhinged today. I'm going to calm down.
The Johnsons were super intrigued, and I'm sure a little disturbed by everything that was going on in the house. And so they decided to call in the big guns. Famed demonologist and psychic medium and paranormal investigators. And because it's the Conjuring, you know who I'm going to bring up. It's Ed and Lorraine Warren.
But also they don't deserve the barrel.
It's Ed and Lorraine Warren. Wait, what's the John Cena song?
Do 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 do. But at the same time, we do not here at Crips and Corks endorse Ed and Lorraine, whatever her name is, Warren.
Lorraine.
Yeah, Lorraine Warren.
We'll get into them. We neither endorse them nor do we discredit them.
Yes. We are not affiliated with the Warrens.
Well, they're dead, so.
Here at Crips and Corks Podcast International LLC at large.
Anyways, the Warrens arrived on the night before Halloween. Spooky. And they just show up and they explain who they are, and Carolyn's like, yes, come in, please, we need help. And they walk in and Lorraine goes, there's a very dark spirit here, and it calls herself Bathsheba.
Ring any bells for those at home?
It was the dog.
The dog. It was the dog.
That dog was like, you bitch, you let me.
Bitch. And they had to call little Miss Lethal Weapon to beat that bitch up.
No, that was the cat. I'm going to find, for the photo dump, I have to find a picture of Andrew Perron as a girl and just label it Miss Lethal Weapon. Little Miss Lethal Weapon.
1976 or whatever year it is.
Now, they explain everything, and they say, we'd love to come back and talk with your husband. But before we go, can we walk through the first floor of the house? The girls were in bed. And so they start walking through, and they come to the main bedroom where Carolyn and Roger sleep. And Lorraine goes, no one should be sleeping in this room. In fact, this room shouldn't be used at all. You should board this up and never enter it again.
Damn.
And then they go to the pantry. And she walks in and she steps out and she goes, quote, terrible. Something awful happened there. Violent. The poor thing. So young. A girl. Blood. Definitely a female.
Oh. I don't know how to feel about that. Keep going.
And the Warrens eventually became fixtures in the family's life for months as they came and went investigating, trying to figure out how to help the young family. They interviewed each of them separately. They came out for multiple investigations and readings. Lorraine basically identified that a member of the family from way back when was SA'd and murdered in the pantry, and her spirit was reliving it, and the door opening and slamming was her trying to escape.
I don't like that. That makes me sad. I hate that.
She thought that the creature that Carolyn was seeing was a former mistress of the house who was threatened by Carolyn. They stated that Carolyn was under the second stage of possession, which is oppression. Mm-hmm. Remember, there are 3 stages to demonic possession. There's infestation, where demon takes up residence in a space. There's oppression, where they try to beat you down. And then there's possession, where they actually take possession of your body.
Yes.
So it's like you are being oppressed. And like everyone can see this. Carolyn is wasting away. She's surviving on coffee and cigarettes. She looks...
How old was she?
She's not that old.
Is she the mom?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
She looks years older than she is. She's losing weight. She's always tired. She's not getting sleep. And so finally, after like months to a year of this, Lorraine goes to Carolyn and says, we have to hold a seance in your house, dear. Carolyn's like, I don't know. And Roger's like, abso-fucking-lutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But Carolyn's like, let's just hear them out. And the Warrens show up with a tech crew, with a priest, with a doctor, and with another medium. And Roger goes ballistic. And the Warrens basically sit them down and say, look at your wife. Your wife is sick. She is under attack. Do you really want her to be any more hurt than she is? Mm-hmm. We are doing everything we can to help you. Please, we know what we're talking about. And so Roger's like, fine. So they tell the girls, why didn't you have sleepovers at your friend's house? Only Nancy could find someone.
Damn, only Nancy
Only
had
Nancy.
friends.
And
Damn,
so
that's sad. That makes me...
Roger and Carolyn tell the girls, you need to go to bed and you need to stay in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And they start the seance. And as they start the seance, Andrea and Cindy sneak out of bed and sneak down the stairs and start watching through a gap in the door. They begin the seance in the dining room. Okay. And, Carolyn is, catatonic through all of this. Mm-hmm. She's crying and she can't bring herself to wipe away her own tears. She's just catatonic.
Mm-hmm.
So they start the seance. And the medium conjures the spirits to come to them, which is where you come up with the Conjuring.
Full circle moment.
And all of a sudden, in this closed room, a wind starts blowing that should have knocked everyone off the floor and blown out all the candles, but it's just blowing everyone around and not blowing out the candles. And the dining room table lifts up off the floor and slams down. And then Carolyn starts speaking in this primitive, otherworldly language. And Andrea, who's witnessing this, said that was not a language of this earth.
Oh my God.
And Roger's freaking out. And as he's freaking out, Carolyn starts to draw her limbs into herself and curl herself into a ball so small and so tight that Andrea is literally waiting to hear her mother's bones snap because she's bending in ways that the human body cannot.
I don't like that.
And then Carolyn goes loose and she throws her head back and she screams this horrific, otherworldly, animalistic scream. And she throws her head back again and she screams. And Andrea said it's like something's yanking her by the back of the head. And she does it a third time. And as she does it, Roger yells, "Stop!" And at that moment, Carolyn and her chair lift in the air and are thrown clear across the house, from the dining room, across the foyer, to the other side of the living room. Her head smacking across the floor with the crack that Andrea said reverberated and through the entire house.
That's crazy.
And that's where I say, to be continued.
Ooh.
Two-parter!
Is she gonna live? Is she gonna die? Will she ever give dome again? Sorry, I know my reaction to that particular story wasn't over the top, but I've heard
it's
that.
Fine, yes.
I've heard
and
that.
Part two, yeah. Like I said, with this one, I wanted to be more linear and chronological. The next part is just going to be sheer hauntings and stories of the terrifying stuff that happened. Mm-hmm. Because the Perrons did live in the house for 10 years.
That's a long time. That's more than 2 years.
You're not wrong.
Exactly. And at this point, I'm leaning towards demons at this point, guys. I'm not sure about you folks at home, but I'm leaning towards demons at this point.
So, Paul, smash or pass? Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren.
Oh, like in the movie?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, wait, who is it again?
Patrick Wilson.
As who?
Ed Warren.
Oh, Smash, yeah.
Smash.
He's cute.
Yeah, he's super
cute. He looks
cute.
good in the movie.
He always looks good.
Yeah, the actor did a good job in that movie. The Conjuring movie is one of my favorite scary movies.
It's
just
a
the
staple.
First one. Just the first one. Not any of the other ones. Just the first one. That was the first movie in a long time that really, spooked me when it came out. I was like, oh, girl. Oh my God. And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people. But I do appreciate that movie. None of the other ones, but just the first one.
Not The Nun?
No,
Not Annabelle?
no, those are a little too campy, okay? It's like giving too mainstream to be scary, you know? But this is a really interesting story. I wasn't expecting to hear things I haven't heard before, but you're giving me like information I never knew about the Conjuring house, and it's like really interesting. Like the story about the dog and like how things were just going sour before they even got to the Conjuring house. I'm learning a lot of interesting things
And I will
didn't
say,
know before.
and I'll get into this more in the next episode as well, but Andrea, almost every single member of the Perron family is still alive today. The only one who's passed on is April, who tragically passed due to a fentanyl pain-killing patch from surgery.
Oh.
She was prescribed it, and she had like a terrible reaction. She died, which is so tragic.
That is really sad, actually.
But like Roger and Carolyn are still alive. The 4 oldest girls are still alive. They all corroborate the story. And Andrea does talk a lot, and she says like it's so weird because like everything had to happen for us to be there.
Right.
And so like yeah, it's spooky, but like Andrea says, if the dog hadn't died, we wouldn't have gone on that vacation, and the cats wouldn't have been killed, and I wouldn't have gotten in that fight.
I mean, that's the same. You could say that about literally anything, you know? The apple's rotten right to the core from all the things that came from before. You know, Charlie XCX, we were on to something. Everything that happened up to this point, so many things had to happen just for us to be here. I mean, even just for this wine to be on this table. But that's getting a little too existential for this one episode.
Yes.
We're an hour and a half in.
Yes,
And
I
I'm
know.
sure the people... Wait, do we have any closing remarks? Closing statements?
Oh, if you haven't caught on, so this is episode 51. Next week is episode 52.
Yes.
It will be our last episode of our first year.
Yes.
So going into October, we will have been podcasters for 1 year. And so the reason why I picked The Conjuring and picked to do this deep dive 2-parter was as kind of like a finale and as like a little anniversary present to you all.
Period. Get into that. I love that. That's actually really such a cute thought. And there are some things to look forward into in October that will be announced later.
But anything else? Or is that all she wrote?
No, I'm very much enjoying this. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I was going to. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you. You thought I was just going to come and be reading the Wikipedia plot of the Conjuring movie?
No, because I've already heard so much about The Conjuring. I didn't expect to hear like things I didn't know before. So this is really interesting. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, everyone, please like, subscribe, follow, comment below. If you are or if you're listening to us audibly on Instagram, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you listen to podcasts, right down in the description below, there's a text us link. You can text us and let us know your thoughts there. Please follow us on all of our social media. You can DM us your thoughts there as well. You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Crips and Corks Pod, or on Facebook or Twitter at Crips and Corks. Please also email us your personal stories or story suggestions. Our email address is cripsandcorks@gmail.com. Paul, where can they find you when you're at home?
You can find me at my personal Instagram and TikTok at Paulember, Paulember. And go ahead and register to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote at headcount.org. And as usual, it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
And if you would like to find me, you can do so either on Instagram or on TikTok at TheRealDeechPowers. If you'd like to write me a love letter, you can address it to the Arnold Estate, Old Round Top Road, Harrisville, Rhode Island, courtesy of whoever lives there now. And like Paul said, please register to vote. Your voice matters.
Period.
And until next time, guys, always ask your realtors if your house is haunted and keep your crips tight.
And your corks loose. Bye.
Bring in the dancing lobsters!
I want to smother it in mayo.
What the fuck?